God bless everybody today. It is June 14th of 2023. This is a Daniel 8 and 10 update. Things are starting to move quickly on the ground. I want to just get into a few things, keep you informed of what's happening in the Middle East and a number of things in the markets. Yesterday we saw this breakout over here. There was these bombings and a couple different things. They were against the Kurds. Today, if you bring this Kurdish map up in the Syrian live map, this is, like I say, the Syrian live map. I index the Kurds, and this gives you this map. We put a base up here just in the last few days, weeks, and they positioned these F-22 Raptors down here because they're watching this start to break out on this northern front, and Turkey's actually bombing not only this area over here, but they're bombing this area over here, and they're also throwing reconnaissance down. We're building up this base here, and so this is starting to break out. And I believe Daniel 8 is starting to take place in front of us. So we're sending these F-22 Raptors over. You'll realize about 16 hours ago they had multiple artillery and drone strikes against this area here. 2 days ago we had an accident with one of our helicopters right here. 22 American servicemen were injured over the weekend, and this is just getting more and more ramping up. So just watch this area. I believe this whole northern area is going to break out soon. Erdogan isn't tolerating the Kurds. I've been talking about Erdogan potentially leaving NATO. He's basically told Sweden they are not going to get access, and if you know how NATO works, all members have to agree, and Turkey and Hungary are right now not agreeing to this, and so Turkey basically is telling Sweden, because of the Kurds, because of the Quran burning, because of the effigy, because of all these things that you've done, you support the Kurds, which are terrorists in Turkey's eyes, and so we're not going to allow that to happen. And I've been talking about this for a while. I believe Erdogan will leave NATO, and he will go against Iran here soon, but not with our support. And here's an article in the Jerusalem Post. Hezbollah to Iran. Israel is looking internally weak, and there is a lot going on in Netanyahu's cabinet, and so it's claiming Hezbollah has recently trained 8,000 fighters and can cross the border and occupy an Israeli town within a few hours. And so Israel's not going to tolerate this. If you sent 8,000 guys into an area, this would be a major confrontation along the border. And so we need to keep an eye on this. Hezbollah, Hamas, all these groups are controlled by Iran. So, of course, Iran's calling the shots here, and they're using these proxies to do their dirty work. So now on the economy, a lot happened today. Jay Powell had his meeting on whether he was going to raise or pause. He did a pause, indicating though they were not going to pivot. They're not going to reduce rates this year, and they potentially could see another raise in July or September. They're just waiting on their data-driven information to determine what they need to do here, which is just a joke in general. Everything's breaking, and you can see that in the markets, and you can see that on what happened today. Markets started out flat today. They dropped $232.79. This was about a 0.68% drop on the Dow. Not a massive drop, but the markets did react, and not only did the markets react tremendously to this information, but the bond market reacted massively, in my opinion. So as the bond market melts up, what I mean by that is the bond market 2-year rate is moving up towards 5. And the long-term rates are also moving up, but not quite as rapidly, and so we're getting this massive inversion. The last time we had this inversion of about 100 points, or 107, is 109, whatever it went down to, is about 107, I believe. We had bank failures. Okay, you're at a 0.92 negative ratio right now, moving into that 100-point ratio area of potential failure of more banks. And so that's why Janet Yellen keeps coming out talking about the banks are going to be consolidating. Of course they are, because they're going to fail. They cannot borrow at a 2-year rate and loan at a longer term rate when there's an inversion like this, because they're losing money when they do that. And so that's why they're tightening all this financial fiscal they're tightening everything up so you can't borrow. They don't want you to borrow because they don't have the liquid cash in the accounts anyway, because the banks don't hold the money. And when they have to borrow at a 4 in this case, you've got a 2-year rate at like 4.6, 4.7, and they're loaning at a 3.5, they can't make any money like this. They're already underwater when that happens. And so it's just not going to be a good day for the Fed. And this inversion is going to break more banks as we start to see this fallout. And it seems like, and these are unprecedented. This is historic, unprecedented inversions. We've never seen this in the history of the fiat currency called the dollar. And so when you see these kind of inversions, you have to be concerned, because this is unprecedented on a number of levels. Last of all, talking Bitcoin, okay? This is the third time this pattern's formed. I've explained this in a number of videos. I believe it's playing out. I saw this a couple months ago, actually back in March. It takes time for these charts to play out. We're in a day chart, so each of these lines means a day, and so yes, it takes time to play these things out. But just as I indicated a year and a half ago that Doge would end up at 8 cents when it was at like 74 cents, everybody thought it was crazy, and ended up, and now look at it, it's probably below 6 cents. It could go below a penny in Doge, okay? Bitcoin, on the other hand, we're having this potential. So this is the right shoulder, went to the neck, came back up, went over this line a little bit, but it did not. Look, there's a massive resistance line. It was only going to go over so far if it did. And then it's going to retract. Once it retraces, it's going to drop back below because the trend is down. This resistance line is holding its head underwater, okay? I talked about how this could potentially drop below 20,000 because it will drop below the neck because it's in a downward trend, and then it will come back up, form the next shoulder, at least if the pattern holds out, and then really drop out. And I mean really drop out, not just a little drop out. This thing could go easily under 10,000 or even potentially negative, because you're looking at the drops before that have occurred when it does this head and shoulder pattern. Look, it had this head and shoulder pattern here, dropped. There's a head and shoulder pattern here, it dropped. This drop and this drop are the same gap, almost identical. This third drop could be the same. There's your shoulder, there's your head, comes down, does the neck, comes back up, drops out completely, and that's called the spring. We'll see what happens in the next 6 to 8 weeks. And like I say, these are day charts. As these patterns form, you start to see them on the daily charts or the minute charts. Then they form out into the daily, weekly, and other charts as it moves forward, because it takes time for these patterns to form. So just realize, when I see these things, you may not see them immediately, but over time they will play out, and I believe this one will play out. And we have this rate hike potentially in July. You've got another one potentially in September. I've talked about how the 4th of July could be a real interesting time as the markets are starting to fall out and your commercial properties are starting to collapse because of default rates, and no one's occupying these commercial buildings because they're not forcing these people to go back into the workplace. And so they're sitting at home. And they just had a really interesting statistic that only 50% of the occupied commercial space since pre-pandemic has been filled. Only 50%, which should tell you the commercial rate is going to go crazy. We're going to see massive defaults. And why is that? Because if you had borrowed at 0.25 and now it's at 5% or 6% based on your term of rate, because you're redoing this loan because they put you on a balloon loan in business, normally a 5 or 7 year, you have to redo these loans. So if you redid your loan 5 years ago at 2.5, now you're at 5 or 7. Some of these guys just can't do that, and they're not occupying these buildings anyway. Same thing's happening with your car loans. Okay, you know, it used to be you could get a 5-year loan, and then it was a 6-year loan, and now it's a 7-year loan. Okay, well, they don't offer a lot of these kind of loans up to that point. You know, if you can pay it off in 7 years, that's great, but look at the interest you're eating on that. So just realize this is happening. I believe this is going to play out. It sure looks to me like this Head and Shoulders is going to form. Will it? I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. I do believe we are moving down now that we are down. We have dropped. Now this has dropped. I believe that the low in Bitcoin, let me look real quick so that I can tell you exactly. Yes, the low in Bitcoin went to 24,818, and you're just sitting above 25. The recent high was over 26,000, so you can see that we've dropped down, 1,000, 1,200 points, marginally about a 3.63% drop on Bitcoin, and I don't see this to stop. I think it's going to drop down below this neckline, hit around just below 20 grand, pop back up, and then really fall out in the next few weeks. So we'll see how that plays out. God bless everybody. I just wanted to give you a quick update. Be safe out there. Find Jesus. He's the only door to heaven, and he is coming in approximately 1,571 days. So good luck. Great night.